it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't stay away. This is supposed to be my day off. Usually I'm not live streaming Wednesdays, but the clown show dragged me back in. Hello, everybody. I just had to do a special episode to break apart this amazing, ridiculous circus of a debate that happened last night. So I'll be playing clips of that. And of course, the other reason I had to do it is because you can't get fucking leftist analysis of anything, like not real, actual left wing. You can get the liberal analysis, you can get the libertarian analysis, you can get some outside opinions, but there's so few of us actually giving a genuine left wing take on this shit show. But hello, everybody. Please, per usual, please click thumbs up, click share. Let people know that this is going on because, we're playing a game called How Are They Suppressing Us Today? It just keeps getting worse with every episode I do. You'd think that most shows tend to grow because you get more subscribers. Those subscribers click subscribe because they like what they were seeing, and so therefore more and more people show up. Somehow mine's the opposite. Somehow, apparently, people are just clicking subscribe and never want to watch it again. Isn't that interesting? But let's just do it. I'm just going to do it. I've written down some time codes to look at, but in general, you could pick any point of this shit show and tear it apart. I will say, and I'm sure I'll repeat this later, that the biggest thing out of this goon squad of necrophiliacs, I don't know why. I just felt like calling them that right now. It just felt right. Okay. It's my truth that they are necrophiliacs. It's my truth. The biggest thing to say is just what they don't talk about, what they won't get near, what gets left out of both sides all of the time. And I'll mention that many times as we go, I'm sure, in one way or another. But let's just go. Let's just do it. And of course, this debate has no audience because actually having the American people to respond to the things you're saying, we're done with that. Because that was awkward, right? You have actual human beings in the room. No. Let's get a room full of nothing but millionaires and just do it quietly amongst ourselves. The next step is they're going to stop televising it. It's just going to be, you're just going to read articles. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris and a couple other millionaires were in a room today, and they yelled at each other for a while, and that was the debate. And yeah, you didn't need to. We're not going to show it to you. You haven't. You have to be at least this rich. It's like one of those roller coaster rides, except instead of this tall, you have to be at least this rich to enter and observe what is being said by your presidential candidates. Anyway, here we go.
And the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
And let me just say that I do love that this is a room of nothing but millionaires, right? You got the two ABC anchors, absolutely millionaires. You got Kamala Harris, multi-millionaires. You got Donald Trump, a multi-billionaire. That's the whole room talking about why are regular Americans complaining? What is it's not working for them? As we sit here, all millionaires sitting around in a circle, millionaires and billionaires just chatting amongst ourselves about the regulars out there. Kamala Harris got some lovely multi-$1,000 pearl earrings on. Trump has his possibly $1 million pearl necklace. He doesn't show it off, and it's under his shirt, but yeah, definitely.
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people.
Have you noticed the shift amongst presidential candidates? It used to be I was a working class kid or I grew up poor, and now you're considered to have street cred if you just grew up as middle class. I feel like that's a shift in the. I'm not trashing growing up middle class. I grew up middle class, but I'm just saying it used to be that they would brag about, yeah, I come from the working class. And now she's like, I grew up middle class. later, I don't know if I'm going to show that clip or not, but later she talks about someone helped raise her, which she says it like that, which I think is just admitting she had a nanny. I don't know that she was even middle class. Sounds like she was fairly wealthy, but
Of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have
it's American dream, because you got to be asleep to believe it. Good old Carlin said that. I believe in the dreams of the American people.
actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing.
The opportunity economy. Well, there'll be a chance that you might not get royally effed. There's a chance you might not be bent over by this economy and just reamed. You'll have an opportunity for that. No, there's no guarantees. There's no. Again, even the lies have shifted. The bullshit, the propaganda, even that has shifted to the right. It used to be they would say, I'm gonna give you this. I'm gonna give you a tax cut. I'm gonna give you a better, health care. I'm gonna give you a better life. They've even thrown that out. Now it's just, well, there'll be a chance. There's a chance. It's like a lottery. There's a chance you'll get health care. You'll have an opportunity to possibly have a job.
We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people.
We don't actually have a shortage of homes. We actually have 17 million empty homes littering the landscape of America. 17 million empty homes. So she's full of shit when she says that. What we do have is millions and millions and millions of people priced out of owning a home. So what we have is exploitative, immensely rich individuals buying up, quote unquote, investing in these houses, waiting to sell them in a better market, that kind of thing, jacking up the prices, jacking up rent. And yes, Robert in the chat is saying BlackRock. BlackRock is the largest shareholder of Blackstone. Blackstone is the largest landlord in the country. And of course, Donald Trump's not different on any of this. But also, Kamala Harris famously let the big banks off the hook after 2008 when they repossessed, stole. It was really stealing because they couldn't prove, most of the big banks could not prove that they actually owned the mortgages because it had been, they played so many games and so much fast and loose bullshit with the mortgages that they couldn't even prove that they owned the properties. And she just let them off the hook with the banning them and let them off the hook by with Tim Mnuchin and not prosecuting them. And this was when she was the head lawyer in California, which was, I think, the largest or maybe second largest, but I think the largest state in terms of stealing people's homes after 2008.
We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children.
Even the lies that they tell about the stuff they're going to give you. So this is the $6,000 child credit. Even though she won't get it passed, or it'll be like one of the things Joe Biden does, where they say, I'm gonna get rid of student loan debt, and then he erased a percentage of it, and then that percentage gets fought in the courts, and then ultimately it's a percentage of a percentage of a percentage of it, and then at the end of the day, one student got a free lollipop or something. So I imagine that this would be similar to that. But even if, let's just say that she did it, $6,000 child tax credit. You pump out a kid, you get $6,000. Not a bad bribe for punting out a little fleshy thing. But let's say she actually did it. It's a Band-Aid. It's a Band-Aid on a system that's so immensely exploitative, so immensely just extractive of our souls and our time and our labor and our hearts and our dreams. And it's like the $2,000 check during the pandemic. It's not that people don't need it. People need this $6,000 when you have a kid. Absolutely. It's not that people didn't need the $2,000. They absolutely did. But as I said then about that, and as I'm saying now about this, these are Band-Aids. These are little checks to basically say, shut up and let the richest people in the known world continue to exploit you in an exploitative system. That's what this is. Both these two lunatics on that stage, both of them agree with that system. And they give nothing that would change that system. The closest you'll get are Band-Aids on it.
My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner.
There was. There was a woman who helped raise us. It's very suspicious. I'm not saying there's plenty of people and honestly, if we lived correctly, if this world were made correctly, there'd be a lot of people helping to raise, it'd be a community. You'd have a lot of people helping to raise the children in the community. But that's not what she's talking about. She said we had a woman help raise us, which I'm assuming is a nanny or something. It's just a very odd way to phrase it. It's just like, there was a lady who happened to have her tit in my mouth. I don't want to give it a name, but it was a thing that was happening. It's just a very odd way for her to say that. I think she doesn't want to say that we were wealthy enough to have a nanny, but
owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to startup small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy.
See, and this also is part of the insanity of the capitalist system in America, but I guess most capitalist systems anywhere, is rather than helping everybody have a life that is comfortable and that works for them, it's only if you do things like pump out a baby or create a business. Doesn't matter whether that business is actually useful to the society. Doesn't matter if that business adds efficiency or adds, a sustainable world. Your business could be, I take used tires and set fire to them and just watch all of the toxic smoke go into the air. It's like, they don't care what the business is. It could be, I sell dildos that are, shaped like religious figures because I sell those to people who hate religion. It could be the weirdest shit. It doesn't matter. The point is, just create a business. Just do it. Just make a thing that pumps more shit into the world. That's where they're willing to give you a loan, is to do that. Like, shouldn't there be money and loans and the ability to get by for just all kinds of jobs? How about for the firefighters in her state of California that are getting paid $1 a day or whatever it is because they're prisoners and they're fighting fires and some of them are losing their lives and they're working for slave wages? How about throw them a couple of bucks, huh? How about just teachers across the country? How about just nurses? Like, there's a million things where it's like, I think we'd benefit by having them have an easier, more comfortable time in their lives, being able to get by. And instead, it's like, no. Forget all that. Screw the firefighters putting out the fires, making sure California doesn't burn down. Forget all that. Just give money to people that he produced a new chair that has a third armrest for your head. Like, it doesn't matter. Just as long as you got a business, we'll give you money. It's just nonsense. It's also an act of avoidance to actually acknowledge the heart of capitalism, what capitalism actually is. Let's see. I wanted to jump a little here to let's get some Trumpy boy in here.
Incorrect statement. She knows that we're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after.
Have you ever break down Trump's sentence structure? It's so disturbing. It's so just like, I mean, we've all stopped making fun of it because we don't like, it's so much. If you were to make fun of every weird, bizarre sentence he said, you'd never get to take a breath. But we're doing tariffs. Like, There's so many people where if you were on television as a respected figure and you were like, we're doing tariffs on countries, they'd be like, what, why are you talking like that? Why? You mean we're imposing tariffs? You mean we've signed tariffs on it? Like we're doing the tariffs. What it is he's like a hillbilly, but he's from New York and he wears a multi-$1,000 suit. So it doesn't matter. We're doing tariffs. We're doing the best tariffs. We're doing loads of tariffs.
75 years pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions.
So without getting too deep in the weeds, he's talking about trade wars, creating trade wars with other countries. And here's the thing is Kamala Harris would agree with all this, right? Biden has not changed these practices. In fact, there's been a bit of a tit for tat where Trump says, I'm going to make it 100% tariffs on Chinese stuff. And then Biden goes, oh, we're going to make it 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles. And it's the American people that suffer on that. He's talking about it like it's a great thing. But in fact, those price hikes then get passed on to the American people to some degree. So really what he's talking about is raising the prices on American people. But even outside of that, it's just trade wars, which is, first of all, it's not free markets. I'll tell you that for goddamn sure. But it's also the fact that both of these two agree with all this. They've done it all the same, trade war against China. Okay. New Cold War against China. Excellent. All this does is push us towards, terrible economics, but it pushes us towards wars. It pushes us towards nuclear war. It's just horrible for everybody. But the reason the two of them both agree on new Cold Wars with Russia and China, et cetera, is because the U.S. empire is losing our hegemony. And so the only way to try and claw back some of that hegemony is to stop other countries from growing, and that's their goal. Now, seems like it's failing, but that's their goal.
And billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places they've left the tariffs on.
But what neither he nor Kamala Harris will say, nor Joe Biden will say, is it's because we all agree, meaning that elite circle, Trump, Harris, Biden, et cetera, they all agree that they want a Cold War with China, possibly moving towards a hot war with a proxy war in Taiwan. But they all are gung-ho for Cold War, trade wars. These things harm the American people. They, of course, harm people around the world. And not to mention, I haven't even gotten into the fact that the reason another portion of the reason that they want to put tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles is because they're the best electric vehicles, even both by price and by efficiency, et cetera, even according to pretty U.S. propaganda outlets, like pretty much high-level U.S. propaganda outlets like The Atlantic. And they've said they make the best and most efficient EVs, electric vehicles. Now, of course, for a world that is being smothered in toxic gases, that would be a wonderful thing, wouldn't it? To have us all getting off of gasoline. Now, of course, long term, you got to get away from cars as well. But they don't want that because that would benefit China to have everyone in the U.S. driving around in affordable, efficient EVs.
When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before. Probably
just about everything Trump says is the best. It's the everything anyone's ever seen before. Everyone agrees. It's just to talk like that is so amazing. But he's talking about inflation, and inflation, the thing that neither he nor Kamala Harris are willing to admit is that inflation is caused by a few things, but one of the biggest things is just corporate greed. These are corporations that realize they can pocket a lot more money by raising all the prices. Another cause or portion of the inflation increase has to do with the fact that there was a 20% increase in the U.S. monetary supply during COVID when they pumped trillions of dollars into Wall Street. And of course, that was done basically, it was done under Trump, but it not been criticized by Biden, pretty much continued as is. So they're all on that team. And if there is one lesson that people should walk away from this debate with, which most Americans will not, it's that these two actually agree on almost everything. And yet it looks like they totally disagree. Listen to them yell at each other. But if you actually pick apart the pieces that they're disagreeing on, these are like it's the crust on the pie. It's the crumbs on the crust of the pie. It is the little outside bits that they violently disagree on. Probably one of the biggest things they disagree on is, and I don't know if I'm going to get to these clips of this part, but is abortion rights. And Democrats know that's a big winner for them, so they really want to harp on that. And there are differences on abortion rights, but there's also the facts that this wouldn't have happened. The overturning of Roe v. Wade wouldn't have happened without Biden forcing Clarence Thomas onto the bench, basically by sidelining Anita Hill. But it also has to do with 30, 40 years of the Democrats not codifying Roe v. Wade when they had the presidency and Congress and could have done it. So it's like, yes, technically it was done by Trump's justices that he put in there, but it was done with the acquiescence and the facilitating by the Democrats over years and years and years. And anyway, but for the most part, that's one of the biggest things they disagree on. But pretty much everything else, it's just the crumbs on the corner of the pie. Let's see where I want to go next. Let's jump to Trump talking about COVID.
So much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump, will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference.
As with a lot of things, the truth on Project 2025 is somewhere in the middle. I did a segment on it a few weeks ago. If you actually look through, I mean, I've read the bullet points. I'm not going to read the dumb thing, but I've read the bullet points. And if you actually look at the bullet points, it's almost everything that the right wing has been trying to do for years. It's nothing new in that regard. There's not like you wouldn't read it and go, what? You'd read it and go, oh, this sounds like a Republican. So I don't know how Project 2025 is any different than what Trump was trying to do in his first term. And of course, much of it, the Democrats would agree with in their slimy little way. But that's why I'm not like, whether Trump is connected to it or not, it's how Republican think tanks, it's the shit they do. It's what they do. It's their bread and butter. You know, like you guys wake up, you have breakfast, and, you know, you go to work. That Republicans wake up and write documents about how they're going to gut everything that remains in this country that could help people. But the Democrats are helping them do it largely. I mean, that's why this is all such a fucking charade.
I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic, and the pandemic was not since.
So they go on. He says he has the greatest economy, and then Kamala Harris says, no, we had a shit economy, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, of course, they're lies. No, everyone knows Trump is lying. But what neither of them can talk about is the fact that the economy in general is set up on the exploitation of all of us. And yes, COVID definitely altered things for a while. And yes, you've had this bounce back of people getting jobs again at post-COVID, but those jobs are all shit. And they were going that way anyway. Like if there'd been no COVID, the trend was still towards a, what do they call it? A precariat, right? Precarious proletariat. The angle that where things were headed were towards and continue to be towards everyone, rather than having a good job, rather than having pensions, rather than having retirement and healthcare and stuff. It's been towards people having, 2 jobs for some app company like Uber, where they've got no healthcare, they've got no job security. If you actually calculate the damage they're doing to their cars, then at the end of the day, they're making, something like $2 an hour. That's where things were headed anyway with technology. So you take COVID out of the picture and this goes on anyway.
Since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it? We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it.
I mean, it's true. Nobody's ever seen anything like him, I guess. Hold on. I want to jump to, let's see.
We had a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, we'll try and lower taxes.
I don't know. I don't know if that was his example of not many sentences. Does he think that was like 4 sentences, run, spot, run? It's unclear what exactly went on in his head at that moment. Maybe he had a seizure. I don't know. But he is right. Here's the thing. If Trump were just a roast comic, if this were just a Comedy Central roast or something, then it'd be pretty funny. It'd be pretty good. The problem is when you give him any real power. But he is right. She has no plans. He also has very few plans. Like if you actually want to know what he's going to do on each different issue, there's almost nothing that he can actually tell you other than, I'm going to stop immigrants. By the way, I'm not playing them all, but he brings up immigrants about every 3rd second. No matter what they ask him about, he's going to talk about immigrants. He flooded the border. They ask him, they could say, in schools, children, a lot of them are having trouble figuring out their math skills. And he'll go, well, I'll tell you some math skills they need to learn. There's 1 million immigrants coming over the border, just pouring in. No matter what the topic is, he'll just say immigrants. He'll just immigrants. And it really seems like some sort of, unhinged mental illness. But I'm sure I'll end up talking more about the immigrant issue in a few minutes.
She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr.
I don't know if I finished saying this. He is right, though, that she doesn't have a plan. She doesn't have any plans. She only put the issues tab on her website like a few days ago, and that is a lot of vague. That is a lot of vague. It's a lot of very vague statements. I analyzed the one about his statement about Israel, but it's not actual plans. There's very little plans. I'm going to give $6,000 to people that pump out a baby. That's about the end of it. That's about the most of it. Let's see what else we got.
And all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration.
Yeah, I already addressed this part about, they want a trade war. They're creating a trade war, and both sides agree on it. And Trump largely started it, but it's continued at pace since he's left office. And this is also another important point. This is because the U.S. can't compete. The U.S. can't compete with China. So the U.S. can't compete with BRICS. I mean, BRICS is bigger than the G7 now. The U.S. can't compete with China. So their answer, which, I thought we were supposed to be for free markets. I thought we were supposed to be for actually competing in the world market. No, can't do any of that. Instead, we're going to put massive tariffs on these countries and try and fight them that way, which is absolutely, it's a rigged game. Okay, let's jump ahead. God, I've been going half an hour. It's not easy to analyze all this bullshit. It's just rivers of bullshit that you're trying to, you know, forge ahead on. It's not easy. It's not easy, man.
The board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So
I'll let her answer in a second, but what he's not saying is Biden and Harris also deported more immigrants than Trump did. This has been widely reported by Reuters and others. They have deported more immigrants than even Trump did. And the other thing that none of them will discuss, Trump's not going to mention it. Harris won't mention it. None of them will mention it. Your mainstream media won't mention it when they discuss immigration, is that we have obliterated all of these other countries in one way or another. Either economic sanctions, coups over the past 100 years, putting in dictators. We have done everything we can to destroy these countries economically. And then we go, why are they coming here? Why do Haitians want to come to the United States? We have done everything. There are boardrooms filled with nothing but goons that do nothing but try and come up with ways to destroy these countries. You know, over the years, I mean, you couldn't even list every Latin American country. I mean, is there any that hasn't been couped by the U.S., or at least the coup has been backed by the U.S.? Brazil, Guatemala, Honduras, and then you go over to Haiti. Of course, we've tried in Cuba. Venezuela, we actually have couped, and they've undone their coup, and so now we continue to try and coup them. Panama, I mean, Ecuador, Bolivia, just goes on and on. Argentina, which is now in the middle of a lunatic because of our lawfare that we helped take out their vice president. And you look at Mexico, we gutted parts of Mexico with NAFTA. So it's just like, yeah, people try and get to the United States because we have destroyed their countries. Maybe if we weren't destroying their countries, it'd be easier for them to stay in these countries.
I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the.
So what she's talking about is adding more militaristic, more dudes with guns, more idiots with guns on the border, arresting people, shooting at people. She wants fascism in various angles in the United States, and Trump here agrees with all that, right? Again, you have them agreeing. She's saying, I wanted to put more guns and lunatics out on the streets, and Trump wanted that too. But her end of her statement here is that he got in the way of the bill because he thought it would look good for Democrats.
The United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources.
Of course, the opioid epidemic that kills whatever 100,000 Americans a year or whatever, that was created by corporate America. It was created by Purdue Pharma. It was created by the same people that are funding her campaign, his campaign. So yes, the fentanyl that is killing people, right, that is not made by pharma, American pharma. However, we got to this place, opioid epidemic, where so many people are addicted to opioids. We got to that place thanks to corporate America, thanks to Purdue, thanks to the Sackler family. And instead, they want to go, oh, no, it's China. China did it.
Sources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem.
So here's what she's right about is he called people, Republicans in Congress, to make sure that bill didn't get through. But what she won't say is, and I'm kind of repeating myself, what she won't say and he won't say is that they agree on this topic. Oh, what do you know? Yet again, you have on that stage right there, you have a Republican and a slightly more right-wing Republican. That's it on certain issues. So you have two Republicans up on that stage. And right here, she's saying, look at what he did. But the underlying note of look at what he did, he killed the bill, is, oh, we agree on exactly this. We agree on being anti-immigrant. We agree on putting bigger guns in the hands of lunatics at the border. We agree in more surveillance. We agree in just unhinged brain parasite nationalism. All of that we agree on is what she's saying. And yet your average American watches this and goes, wow, they are so different. They sure do disagree on these things.
And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader.
All right, hold on. I gotta get to one of the best parts of this debate here in a minute.
You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first. And I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies.
So stupid. It's just like, my rallies are wonderful. I love my rallies.
Rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to.
I mean, there's also the fact that he did get shot at one of his rallies. I don't know if he's mentioning that. One of the people at his rally literally shot him. So I don't know how much you want to say we have the best people at our rallies. One of them did shoot you.
Take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be
millions and millions of people coming into our country. What was it? Trump's family immigrated from, where was it? And his the initial name. Somebody in the chat will know what was his family name. They changed it to Trump because it sounded tougher and cooler. But wasn't it Tramp or something? What was his initial? I can't remember his initial Danish name or whatever it was. And then you've got Kamala Harris, his initial Dutch name. And then you've got Kamala Harris, who is very proud of being part Jamaican and part Indian. Drumpf. Yeah, there it was. Their name was Drumpf, and they changed it to Trump. So you've got two children of basically immigrants, maybe one generation removed, being like, these fucking people coming into the country, we gotta stop them. And this is true for most people in America. Like, through our entire history, we've had like 10 to 15% of 10 to 15% of the population has been immigrants. Throughout since 1776, it's 10 to 15% of the population is immigrants. It's just that we've changed which are the bad immigrants as the time has gone on. It used to be those goddamn Irish and those goddamn Scottish and those goddamn, and then it switched to those goddamn Latin Americans. Freaking Mexicans. And for a while we wanted all of the Chinese that we could get because they were really cheap workers and we could abuse them and get them to build the cross-country railroad, transnational railroad, and just blow them up in the mines, and it didn't matter. No one even complained. You could kill them and it wouldn't matter. And so we wanted all the Chinese. So we were like, come one, come all. And then we were done with that part, and we were like, we don't want these Chinese immigrants. So then we were like, get out of here, these dirty Chinese immigrants. So there's been this back and forth of, oh, we want the immigrants. Oh, we don't want those immigrants. Oh, we hate these immigrants. Oh, those are the dirty ones. Oh, these are the good ones. This has gone on throughout our history, and here it continues right now.
Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country. And it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason.
Can someone please auto-tune "They're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs" and turn it into a song? Because if there's ever something that should be a song to represent this entire presidential shit show, it's "They're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs." It reminds me of when they auto-tuned, this is going way back. What is this, early 2000s? Went viral, the clip of the guy who he stopped a stranger from coming through the window of his sister's room or something like that, and they interviewed him on a local news, and he at some point says hide your mothers, hide your daughters, they're raping everyone around here, and someone auto-tuned it and turned it into a song. And anyway, we got to do that with this Trump line. Someone has to do it, please.
They go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country. And if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, will end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Just to clarify, no one's eaten any cats and dogs. I just want to, who had on their bingo card when they were watching the debate, being fact-checked on whether everyone's eating everyone's pets? Was that in your debate bingo? So just to clarify, they're not eating any cats and dogs. But it is funny. First of all, the fact that he had that ready, the moderator had this ready, means someone beforehand was like, there's a chance Trump is going to say that immigrants are eating cats and dogs. Someone prepped for this. Someone knew this might come up. That's amazing. That I want to be in that prep room. Okay, here's some things Trump might say. At some point, he might say it's not true that he poops and pees his pants a lot, and we need to fact check that and give exact times and places that he has pooped and peed his pants. Might come up that he says immigrants are eating your cats and dogs. We need to say there's been no evidence that they're eating cats and dogs. Amazing. Just amazing. Just this is just wonderful. I'm glad America's gotten to this point.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
The people on television saying their dog was eaten by the
this is all they disagree on. This is the only thing the two parties disagree on. One believes you should be able to eat other people's pets. The other one says not such a good idea. That is the only thing.
Of the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formally worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney.
She just proudly said she has the endorsement of 200 former Republican staffers, of Dick Cheney, of people that used to work for Donald Trump, and she's proud of this. This is now the party of Dick Cheney versus the party of Donald Trump. That's what you're looking at. And the reason these lunatic Republicans are willing to endorse a Democrat is because there is so little difference between the two parties. There is almost no difference. And that is why, if you actually wanted to see difference, you would need to have on that debate stage Jill Stein, Claudia de la Cruz, Cornel West. Then you would actually see real anti-war speakers, real people that stand up for working Americans. Instead, you have these two incredibly rich, unhinged sociopaths pretending there's a real stark difference between them when there's not. I have a couple of red lines when it comes to voting for someone for president. One of them is if they support genocide. That is a red line for me. So I am not going to vote for anyone who does that, anyone who believes that Israel can just kill 40,000 people and it's fine. 70% of them women and children. Anyone who believes that, they're off my list. Doesn't matter what else they believe. I don't care if the next plank on their platform is universal basic income. I don't care if the next plank is actual, real universal health care. It doesn't matter to me. There's a red line there, okay? And neither of these two lunatics are anti-war at all. At all. All right, let's go to what do we got here? Let's see. Kamala Harris.
Coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement.
So she's talking about the fact that he talks about how crime's gone through the roof. That's one of the things he kept saying is under Biden and Harris, crime has gone through the roof. Crime is up everywhere. Actually not shown to be true, first of all. But so, he's just full of shit. But beyond that, she then brings up his largely white collar crimes. She brings up the fact that he's facing all of these, criminal cases. And that's a great point, that we should talk about white collar crime too. When we say crime's gone up or crime's gone down, we should talk about the massive crimes that impact all Americans. But instead, except for the case of Donald Trump, which she brings up right there, they ignore it completely. They ignore all of those crimes, as do the entire ruling elite, because they're in that club. It's their club committing those crimes. It's their club stealing everybody's money via Wall Street. It's their club that is creating the opioid epidemic with Purdue Pharma. It's their club that runs Monsanto and Bayer and big oil and big banks. It's their club of elites. And so they are not going to mention any of those crimes, which are far bigger than the amount of crime that is done on the street level. On the street level, if you just if you translate it to just sheer dollar amounts of like stealing wallets and stealing cars and things, if you were to take that dollar amount and compare it to white collar crime, it is a drop in the bucket. It is nothing. If you were to just compare the number of wallets stolen on the street versus wage theft by just, McDonald's and fast food restaurants, it would be a drop in the bucket. Street crime is nothing compared to the crime committed by the wealthy, by the corporate elite. It is nothing. So, but of course, that doesn't matter, because who is it that, first of all, writes the laws? Well, it's the elite that write the laws. Okay, so they're going to make it easier to get out of white-collar crime, easier for these companies to get away with wage theft, etc. But on top of that, who is it that runs the police department? Who is it that directs where the police department should go? Well, they got to go after the street crime. The street crime threatens the ruling elite, whereas the ruling elite are not threatened by their own crimes they're committing against those who are not the ruling elite. I mean, the idea of crime is just so misunderstood, and the amount of propaganda around it in order to just have we have the one of the largest police forces in the known world that has ever existed, and essentially none of them are going after the largest source of crime in this country, which is corporate crime. And of course, most of you know Harris and Trump completely agree on just crazy funding for police departments. Just keep pumping money into the fist of the fascist state. Just give them all the money you can. Give them all the weapons you can. Both of these two agree on this topic. It really is tough for them to find things they disagree on. It's not so easy. Let's see. They get to a list of how much Kamala Harris has flip-flopped recently.
Not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation
We do have a lot
that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking.
Okay, so yet again, they agree. Each of these things, honestly, this is Kamala Harris trying to convince the nation and remind the nation that she agrees with Donald Trump on all this stuff. Like, if you actually look at what's being said, oh, Donald Trump approves fracking, endless oil production, not restricting it at all. Kamala Harris is standing there telling you, I am not for banning fracking. In fact, I cast the tie-breaking vote. It was actually in her hands. Very few things is it in, unless you're president, and then there's a few things you can do, but very few things are in one person's hands in our government. But she was the tie-breaking vote. It was in her hands to decrease fracking, and she didn't do it. And so she is trying to remind everyone and convince the nation that she agrees with Donald Trump on fracking, on big oil, on the death of our environment, on the complete catastrophic end to the world as we know it under climate crisis. She agrees with him. And in fact, there's been more oil production under Joe Biden than there was under Donald Trump. Not because either of them disagree with each other, just because they're both trying to pump as much oil as possible. And again, I know I sound like a broken record. Here's the part of this analysis that you cannot get from even most independent media. This, at the end of the day, a lot of this comes down to petrodollar. We got to keep pumping the oil. We need the whole world to keep pumping the oil, or else the petrodollar, our dollar, will lose its power. The U.S. empire will lose its power. So you got to keep that oil pumping all the time. And that's what they're doing.
My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had
They say that, but they never actually do anything to pursue that. So they can say, oh, we need to try other sources of energy, but they don't actually fund other sources of energy. Not really.
Largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able.
So she then doesn't address any of the other. She said, I'm going to address all of the flip-flops you just listed. She only addresses fracking. And her answer to it is, no, I love fracking. I love oil. Awesome. I would not do anything to harm fracking. By the way, fracking also contaminates tons of water, fresh water. People have flammable tap water. People are getting cancer across the country. It causes earthquakes across the country. And yet here you have two people arguing over who's going to allow more fracking. Let's see. Let's jump to this.
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly, he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election.
Now, this is funny. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not here to defend Donald Trump. I'm not going to deny that. Of course, he was trying to upend the election. That's what he does. But it's just funny coming from a woman who has received 0 votes, either to be vice president or to be the nominee for president. 0 votes. The last time she got votes for anything was either to be a senator for California, or then she got some votes in the primary when she ran for president, but she was getting so few votes that her campaign was pretty catastrophic. And she ultimately then drops out. She's then picked by Biden as the vice president nominee, but 0 votes. So she's talking about he's upending the will of the American people. There is no will of the American people behind her. So it's just funny coming from her. I'm not saying Donald Trump doesn't want to overturn elections. Of course he does. Of course, he's willing to do anything he can to overturn elections. But as we've seen, Biden and Harris are willing to do anything they can to overturn elections. And of course, our system, I'm not going to go through all the ways, is rigged in about 40 different ways. Some of them done by Republicans, some of them done by Democrats during their own primaries. But it's not democracy. It's the furthest thing from democracy that you can imagine. I mean, and so it's just funny that the Democrats will say, oh, we're trying to rescue democracy. And it's like, you legit rigged your primaries in too many different ways to count to make sure that an actual popular candidate, Bernie Sanders, could not become the nominee for president, and he would have defeated Donald Trump. That's what they did. So they don't want democracy. I mean, there is 0 democracy, and they're not fighting for it. Okay, next it gets kind of weird with Trump's bragging about the Nord Stream pipeline.
Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day 1, but he ended the XL pipeline.
So I didn't know that this was a bragging point of Donald Trump. Donald Trump, here's the thing, is he yet again is trying to find ways that he and Biden are different when in fact they're the same on so many things. It's like he has to pretend Biden and Harris are some crazy left-wing Marxists in order to try and pretend they're different when in fact they agree on everything. So, but I didn't realize that he says he stopped Nord Stream, the Nord Stream pipeline, and Biden then returned the Nord Stream pipeline, which is like insanity. We know, and he's denying it, and of course Kamala Harris and all the others would deny it, but we know that the U.S. blew up the Nord Stream pipeline in one of the largest acts, or the largest act of industrial sabotage the world has ever known. And that was done under the Biden administration. So if you're a fan of that, if you're a fan of blowing up other countries' pipelines, countries that you're allied with, like Germany, then you should give credit to Biden, because that was a Biden-Harris thing. Not that it was actually decided on by Biden, but so this thing about I stopped the Nord Stream pipeline and Biden put it back is just so bizarre. Really bizarre. What a bizarre brag. And of course, then he says, oh, he stopped the Keystone, but now isn't the Keystone going again?
The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that, but he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany.
And of course, even with the pauses in the Keystone or the Mountain Valley, or the pauses in these pipelines, the Biden administration has had more oil pumped out of the U.S. and produced from the U.S. than Trump did. So, yeah, it's better to have things paused than not paused. But here you have, yet again, these are 2 climate lunatics, climate criminals, environmental criminals on a stage trying to pretend they disagree with each other.
Biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed.
It's pretty tough to understand half of what he's saying, but hold on. I want to get to Israel.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held.
It's not a war. It's a genocide.
Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how. Saying
during World War II, would you say Germany had a right to defend itself? Because this whole right to defend itself garbage. Okay, like, I know I've done this before, but they've defended themselves against more journalists than any conflict ever. They've defended themselves against more children proportionally than any conflict in recent years. They've defended themselves against UN staffers by killing more UN staffers than any conflict in history. They've defended themselves against more doctors than any conflict in history. Like, the whole defended themselves is just a garbage propaganda point. So here you have these two moderators who are supposed to be the unbiased, unvarnished truth, right? They're the truth. Here they come with the truth. And yet, of course, they're spitting out all this propaganda as well.
Saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain.
You notice the use of the passive voice. 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Oh, how'd they die? I don't know. They bumped into a wall. They were just like walking around and they tripped and they just found dead. We showed up and they were all dead. Who knows what happened?
Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here.
Let me not answer the question and instead say some more garbage for Israel.
On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis.
Actually, we know it's been proven, and this has been widely reported by many Israeli newspapers that are very pro-Israel, that the IDF did a lot of the killing that day. Who knows whether it was half? Who knows whether it was more than half? But the IDF killed hundreds of Israelis that day. And, you know, this has been proven again and again. And this is why all of the cars, hundreds of cars that were shot up and burned, where Israel shredded them and buried them in an undisclosed location, because they proved that the IDF was killing these people. We have interviews. We have live on television interviews with some of the tank gunners that say they were told to fire at civilian structures and kill everyone inside. These interviews were shown on Israeli television, on pro-propaganda Israeli television, that, you know, obviously some of the truth slips through, even when you're pro-Israel, even when you're doing that propaganda, some of the truth slips through. We know all of this, and Kamala Harris refuses to acknowledge any of it. And then she, of course, also keeps putting forward the false allegations. So
Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely,
that's been completely disproven. However, that is going on in Israeli prisons by Israeli authorities on Palestinians. That has been proven absolutely true.
I said then, I say now. Israel has a right to defend itself. We would.
Yeah, the U.S. government is genocidal maniacs. And so saying we would do it doesn't make it good. That does not make it good. Doesn't make it okay. We are a country based on genocide. So being like, this is like, you know, this is like a blood-covered serial killer being like, listen, I would have done it. Look, you got to do what you got to do. This is Christian Bale in American Psycho going, hey, I would have done it. I would have done it. I would have done it.
And how it does so matters, because it is also true far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers.
Again, passive voice. Far too many have been killed. How were they killed? I don't know. Somebody did it. Somebody must have done it. So then she does this thing about two-state solution. Hold on, I want to see Trump's response here.
Prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza.
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president,
never started. I forgot to mention, by the way, when Kamala was doing her little rant, that Israel, New York Times has reported, along with others, that Israel knew the exact details of the October 7th plan for a year in advance. They even had video of Hamas training on gliders that was posted on Instagram. They knew it was going to happen. And then for some odd reason, when it actually happened, they just didn't. They were so surprised. They just didn't know what to do. They took them hours to even send any troops to go stop it. Just wow. How could we have known except for the detailed 70-page document with all the details that we had for a year?
Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up. Far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentioned
then he shifts to Ukraine, but
about Israel, all of a sudden she hates Israel.
But see, yet again, hold on, before I get to that. These two idiots. Trump would be as bad or equally bad on Israel, okay, on what's going on in Gaza. Trump has said things like finish the job. Trump has endorsed the full ethnic cleansing of Gaza. So to act like he's any different, it would be ridiculous. And yet he's got to pretend there's some difference there's some light, some daylight between him and Kamala Harris on Israel and their genocide. So what does he do? He says, she hates Israel. She's anti-Israel. She's so anti. Really? Because that's what I just said. That just sounded like. It sounded like she is part of a administration that has allowed this and facilitated this and actually built that fake pier just to allow more genocide to go on and send weapons, sends missiles to be rained down on children every 36 hours. Every 36 hours, there's a shipment, and they have not even begun to pause any of them. So they just tell Netanyahu, yeah, there's more bombs at your door tomorrow. We'll keep sending them. And do you think Netanyahu feels any need to actually stop if he's going to keep getting the missiles, the bombs they need? Absolutely not. So this also means, guess what? We're his supplier. If you have a friend who's addicted to cocaine and it really has a problem and really needs help, and you go, hey, I think maybe you should just do a little bit less, do 10% less of what you're doing, and which is basically what we've said to Israel. And then they go, no, I don't want to do that. And give me everything you got. And you go, okay, here it is. I'm your supplier. Here's all the cocaine. Go do it. Well, here's an idea. Stop giving it to them. Or decrease the amount. But no, the U.S. doesn't do that at all.
She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party.
So yet again, they're finding tiny little things to pick apart. Yeah, Kamala Harris did skip Netanyahu's speech to Congress because she thought it would look bad politically to have her face there cheering for him. She obviously couldn't show up and sit while all of Congress is applauding the maniac. Dude, they were so thrilled to have that bloodthirsty maniac speaking to them. So she realized it wouldn't look good, and so she didn't go, but it's all theatrics. It's not actually actions. Zero actions. There's no difference between the two of them on actual actions. The only difference is Trump would have been at that speech by Netanyahu cheering him on. Yay, go G-side. All right, let's see here. Let's jump to Trump says he would stop the war in Ukraine.
Well, it's important to remind the former president, you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the
Touche.
reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans.
So keep in mind what she means by give it up. That means sit down at a peace table and actually stop the massacre of Ukrainians. That's what she's defining as give it up. The U.S. has created, manufactured a proxy war in Ukraine. And you know, I've called it a Russian invasion. I know others don't like to call it that, but it's no doubt that the U.S. created it. This war didn't actually start in 2022. It started in 2014 when 15,000, between 2014 and 2022, 15,000 Ukrainians, Russian, culturally Ukrainians, were murdered in the Donbass region by neo-Nazis and others. And so this war has been going on low scale for years and years, ever since the U.S. created the Maidan coup in Ukraine. And even New York Times, again, has admitted that the CIA has been in Ukraine on the borders of Russia, training Ukrainians, sending Ukrainians into Russia since 2014 at least. At least. Likely far longer than that, but 2014 at least. So when she says give it up, she means that he would stop sending missiles to Ukraine and telling them not to have a peace deal, which even Victoria Nuland just the other day admitted that the U.S. and Britain stopped the peace deal when in 2022, when the war was 1 month old. Even she admitted it. Now, would Trump actually do that? I don't know. He might allow Ukraine to have a peace deal. He might allow that. I don't know. I have no idea.
Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence.
Sovereignty and territorial integrity. Who despises sovereignty and territorial integrity more than the United States? Who invades more countries? Who bombs more countries over the past 50 years? Who obliterates more people? Who coups more countries, both quietly and in full frontal? The U.S. don't give a shit about sovereignty and territorial integrity. In fact, just to create the proxy war in Ukraine, the CIA was in Ukraine. Doesn't look like we're caring about territorial integrity there. Yeah, Kamala. We do. We care so much. The U.S. cares so much about sovereignty and territorial integrity. Let me jump ahead a bit here.
Countries at the time to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen, for years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO.
So this is Trump bragging about how he got some NATO countries to pay some money. But what it really is at the heart of it is these two agreeing 100% on NATO, which is a war-making alliance. NATO creates wars. It destroys countries like Libya, obliterates them. NATO people across America think NATO equals good or something, but it's just the Christmas wreath on the front of the pedophile's home. Oh, it says NATO. It must be nice. No, it's a war-making alliance. And here you have two people again agreeing exactly on NATO, that NATO should keep getting bigger, that it should keep creating wars, that it should be heavily funded, that it should be heavily armed, et cetera, et cetera. So yet again, zero difference between them.
To pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not.
Of course, the fact that ultimately the troops came out under Biden does not mean that Biden stands for peace. It actually, more than anything, it shows a shift in the way that the United States makes war. The United States doesn't need men on the ground to create war anymore. And politically, it's better to just create war without men on the ground. And so, actually, this goes with what she's about to say.
One member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand.
So she says there is not one active duty U.S. military officer in a war zone right now. First of all, absolute lie, 100% lie. There are U.S. troops at minimum advising, quote unquote, in Ukraine, in Israel, in the case of Syria, the U.S. claims to own a third of Syria, which means there are U.S. bases in Syria. So this idea that there are no U.S. troops in war zones is bullshit. But then besides that, we have 800 military bases around the world. So just because you don't have a guy standing in the middle of Iraq shooting at people does not mean the U.S. is not everywhere around the world. But even besides all of that, let's take her at her word. Let's take her at her word, right? Let's give her the old benefit of the doubt. Say, okay, 0 U.S. troops are in war zones right now. What this speaks to is that war has changed. And for the U.S., the way the U.S. commits war is it's easier to just do it with bombs, with unmarked mercenaries, with economic war, with drones. That's how the U.S. creates war. And right now we are at war, if you count economically, with 30 some odd nations. If you are ignoring the economic wars, then we are at war with like 7 nations. And you don't have to have troops there. In fact, troops there often makes the political story more difficult, the lies more difficult, and Americans care when they see a troop coming home in a flag-draped coffin. So if you can just bomb countries from overseas or from, battleships and not have to actually have a guy there, a dude on the ground, it's much easier, much better. So saying we don't have a troop in active, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We are still at war. We're still murdering. We're still killing. We're at war in many places across this world.
Understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down.
All right, I'm not going to spend time on that. She talks about his deal with the Taliban. Whatever. I mean, Afghanistan was such an epic disaster under many presidents. It's like, yeah, I'm sure Trump's deal was terrible, but I'm sure that everything we've done with the Taliban has been terrible. Everything we've done in Afghanistan has been terrible. A lot of the Afghanistan complete disaster was done under Obama. So it's not like it was just Donald Trump's fault. But again, this is where these people are exactly the same. They just don't want to admit it. All right. Couple more clips, and I'll wrap up.
Who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging.
That was so awkward. That was just like bad acting. She was like, oh, I've practiced this line about optimism, but I don't actually sound optimistic most of the time. So I'm going to go up in pitch. I was saying, hey, I was optimistic about what's happening here.
The American people, I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans.
She legit has 0 plans. Like if you look at her website, again, they added the issues page a few days ago, and most of it is vapid nonsense. There are very few actual plans. There, it is. It's just it's vague, broad statements. So she says, "Let's have plans. I'm gonna have plans, lots of plans," and she doesn't actually have plans. Not that I've seen. I assume that they believe that politically it's best for her to just make it through the election with zero plans, with zero policies. That's the goal. Except I'm going to give you $6,000 if you pump out a kid. That seems to be it. By the way, I'm going to do one or two more clips, but I just want to say, everybody who's here, it would be a huge help if you could, even if you just join up for free. If you join up for free at leecamp.net, when you get there, if you want to become a paid subscriber, scroll down and become a subscriber. But if you want to just join up for free, go to leecamp.net, click become a member. You can get the free membership, and you won't get all of the perks, but you'll get a lot of things. You can be part of the community over there, and that would be amazing. So just open a tab. You can keep watching. Open a tab separate from this one. Type in leecamp.net. Keep it open. Then when we're done here, just go sign up, because the suppression is just getting crazy. I mean, YouTube's really been attacking me in the past few weeks. And so I have to, the only way I can keep in touch with you is if you guys sign up at my other pages. So I hope you'll do that. And I hope you'll also check out my podcast. It's called The Lee Camp Show on Spotify. I also have another podcast called Common Censored. Anyway, a lot of great shit, but hope you'll do that. Hope you'll support my show by at least becoming a free member at leecamp.net. Okay, I want to get to, let's see, let's get to climate change. I'm sure these guys are great on climate change, right?
Insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have a.
By the way, they both are pretty close to being agreeing on healthcare now. They both believe it should be a giant giveaway to insurance companies. Trump wants to get rid of Obamacare, but the truth is he's now started backing off on that because he realizes that means he'd probably have to create something of his own, and he doesn't want to have to do that. So he now seems to be saying that he would keep Obamacare or until there's a better plan or something. Anyway, but both of them want giant giveaway to insurance companies. Both of them want the U.S. to continue to be the only industrialized country without universal health care, in which we are all pillaged every time we get sick. They both agree on that. Interesting. They agree on something. Oh, they agree on almost everything. Let's see. It's coming up.
Another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president of.
So she just gave great points about how climate change is bad, it's ruining people's lives, and she basically is doing nothing about it.
The last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy while we have also.
That means nothing. Unless you're actually going to get off fossil fuels, which they are not, that means nothing. Unless you're actually going to go after big ag, which is one of the largest climate crisis causing entities in the world, unless you're actually going to do that, then you don't actually mean it. And they mean nothing when it comes to actually changing our systems to create a sustainable world for your kids, for your grandkids.
Also, increase domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald.
Bullshit. You have not invested in clean energy. In fact, you've just stopped one of the most affordable, effective electric vehicle makers from having any cars in the United States because it's Chinese. They also, by the way, put massive sanctions on solar panels, Chinese solar panels and batteries, all of which are needed to actually have a closer to green economy.
Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles.
No, that's not actually what it means at all. That's part of part of having a clean economy is just investing in non-clean things that exist in America. Really, I have no idea.
It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving.
Keep in mind, this is his answer about climate change.
They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable, but we're not going to let that. We'll put
Are you learning about climate change right now? Are you learning about climate crisis?
tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible.
So, of course, that's ridiculous. It's not what Biden and Kamala Harris has done to manufacturing. It is the waning of the U.S. empire. The U.S. has exploited the ruling elite, including the corporate rulers, have exploited Americans to such an extent that there's kind of not a lot left here for them. So they are moving overseas where they can exploit other workers at a better price, more effectively. And that's what's happening. It has nothing to do with the presidency. It has to do with how capitalism works. Now, you can slow down or put some leashes on the capitalist monster as it vomits all over you. You can put some leashes to kind of slow its movement, but you don't stop where the gravity of capitalism goes. It's always going here. It's always going towards full exploitation, towards full extraction of resources. Earth Overshoot Day is what? The end of August? We just passed it the other day. Earth Overshoot Day each year is the day we use more on this planet than it can remake in a year. So we use more by the end of August than this planet, Earth. That's the one I'm referring to, in case you were confused as to which planet I meant. That then Earth can recreate in a year. That's Earth Overshoot Day, and now it's moved into August of the year. And of course, this happens every year, right? It just keeps getting farther and farther back. But yeah, Trump's answer about climate crisis never says the words climate crisis, never says the word climate. And again, that is the difference between. And that's how some liberals get fooled, is the difference between these two monsters, these two sociopaths, is that one of them will say words like climate change. One of them will say words like environment sometimes. One of them will say words like green energy. The other one will not. But at the end of the day, they essentially stand for the same thing. And until we get our minds out of this theater that they're presenting to you, there will be no real change. And we have to break the mind virus that is this political theater, this circus. And you only break it by getting outside of the little Overton window that they're debating in. Okay. I wasn't going to bring you a live stream today. Wednesday is supposed to be my day off, and I brought you 90 minutes. So I hope you appreciate this. I hope you, throw a couple of bucks in if you feel like you got a couple of bucks worth. No matter when you're watching this, you can push the little tip jar or whatever. There's a tip jar also at linktree.com/Lee Camp. There's a tip jar in locals, and you guys are helping keep this show going. I really can't stress that. I'm glad to be fighting with you all. The fight should be fun. The revolution should be fun. So at least we can have a revolution with laughter. That's my goal. The revolution will have laughter. All right. I will see you tomorrow for another live stream, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, and keep fighting. And remember, just show up. They're not going to send you the alerts. Someone told me today that she even clicks the notify me button on the videos to be told when the live stream starts. And even then, they aren't alerting her to my live stream starting. So you just got to show up. 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. And this Friday, 95% sure Eleanor Goldfield will be there. All right. Keep fighting.